Here we are in the offseason with re-signing at a close. A few headlines here. We see Joe Flacco is testing free agency. The Panthers are trying to get a deal with him done. They'll probably throw something his way just to have an attempt to bring him back, but not able to get it done during the re-sign period. Then the San Francisco 49ers, as expected, are moving on from Drew Brees, who's their 36-year-old quarterback. He was great for them, but now after going 2-15, they are likely going to go for a quarterback in the draft, likely Jameis Winston. Then you've got Tommy Harris, the defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears. He's played for other teams as well, but he is going to be testing free agency this cycle. Two other quarterbacks who are testing the market. We have Colin Kaepernick, who is finally departing from the Baltimore Ravens after being the backup, the starter. Now he's getting a chance to test the market and see if he lands somewhere more productive. Baltimore also wanted to kind of cut ties with him and focus on maybe a new direction, especially because they've never won with Kaepernick. Mark Sanchez is also not resigning, at least testing the free agency market. We'll see what teams decide to use his services. Two other San Francisco 49ers are testing free agency. You got Haloti Ngata, probably the number one defensive player, number one defensive tackle in the league. He's set to test out free agency. And then Dez Bryant, I was about to say Antonio Brown. And Dez Bryant, the 26-year-old Pro Bowler, is also testing free agency from the San Francisco 49ers. The Pittsburgh Steelers move on from Delaney Walker, mostly because they didn't have the cap space. They signed Jared Cook last season, or maybe 2 seasons ago, who was younger, and so he is likely going to be replacing the Pro Bowl tight end in Pittsburgh. So Delaney Walker, at 28 years old, is one of the top tight ends in the league. He's testing free agency, along with the other 30-year-old tight end here, Greg Olsen. I think he's misspelled there. I think it's Olson, but anyway, whatever. He is the veteran tight end. He's going to be testing free agency after his several seasons in New Orleans. Then Heath Miller from the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles just have no cap space, so they couldn't bring him back. I always liked Heath Miller, but he is going to be testing the market there. He is over 30 years old as well. Then you got Derek Johnson, the one linebacker for the Buccaneers. He is a solid Pro Bowler that is 32 years old, testing the market. Then one of the top running backs is Mike Goodson from the Washington Commanders. He is 28 years old, and he is going to be testing the market here in this offseason. All right, so we're going to go and take on free agency from my franchise because it's going to be the fastest way to get through this and to be as thorough. So the free agency period has ended. We can see some top free agents there, and I will break down each one by team. So the 49ers, they bring in Sean Witherspoon, 27-year-old run stopper, one of the best linebackers in this free agency class. Donnie Jones, the punter, because they lost Andy Lee. They bring in DeMarco Murray, probably the second best running back overall in this class. Murray is only 27 years old, so they definitely needed to have real running back because they've been working with like Dion Lewis and let's see, actually, I'd go pull it up. Because when they lost Arian Foster, they kind of lost a lot of their talent. They got Niall Davis, so they really needed a feature back, and DeMarco Murray can deliver that for them. They also bring in Jermaine Gresham, a 27-year-old tight end, so younger. I think that's a great addition for them. They needed some a good pass-catching tight end and a big guy. I think he's, 6'5"? Yep, 6'5". Stephen Paye, the defensive tackle from Houston. Barry Church from the Bengals. And then they bring in Carson Palmer. Now, the odds are with Palmer is that he's 35 years old, unlikely to be the starter. Maybe he'll start week 1 if Jameis Winston really sucks in preseason, which I don't normally play. I can say Winston like he's the pick, but he's going to be the pick. They are the number 1 overall pick. They let Breeze go. So Palmer kind of can step in as a mentor for that team. Chicago, they replaced Tommy Harris with a younger version, so 25-year-old Corey Liuget from the Philadelphia Eagles. They also have Josh Freeman. Bears would love to get a quarterback in the draft, but Mariota is the only one that will likely be there at number 2, so they'd have to trade to Washington to get that pick. And there's no guarantee that they'll get it or other teams might go for it. So they get Freeman there, who was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 2nd round back in 2009. Freeman has not really had a solid career as a player. He's been a backup for most of it, but that doesn't mean he can't pull Geno Smith or something and come out of it and come through for Chicago. So we'll have to check that and see if Freeman can be the starter here, or if maybe after the draft, if no one gets drafted, there might be some free agents I can sign. Like there's like a Ryan Mallett that could go somewhere and compete for a starting job. Then Nate Allen, safety from Green Bay, so rival going to another rival team. And then Mikael LaShore going from the Rams. Bengals, they bring in a solid right tackle. He used to be with Cleveland for a long time. Then he was with Detroit. So they get their right tackle solidified. They also bring in 2 solid defenders from Richard Sherman and Derek Morgan. So in the AFC North, the Bengals won the division with their rookie quarterback Derek Carr, rookie running back Devonta Freeman. So now they bring in a right tackle to protect him, and they bring in a center and Jason Kelsey. So this is really to help solidify that those core, I call them like infrastructure positions. Right? You got the flashy ones like quarterback, running back, receiver. Then you got the infrastructure like offensive line, and they really focused on that in this free agency period. They bring in a Super Bowl champion Przinski. We'll see if he actually starts or if he's just kind of a role player in the backfield. But Sherman is definitely going to be a huge help in that AFC North division. Then the Buffalo Bills bring in Heath Miller from the Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl champion. Again, I would have kept him on the Eagles, but just could not because of cap space. Send Derek Marks from the Jaguars, moves on over, along with Pat Sims from the Panthers. There was a fire sale of Panthers defensive players in this free agency class. They also bring in Dwayne Bowe as a wide receiver, along with Danny Amendola and Leonard Hankerson. So they got 3 new wide receivers, well, 2 new ones, and they bring Amendola back. And then they bring in Jay Cutler. Now, Cutler, of course, he left Chicago because he was the backup there, didn't do very well. But the Bills are also looking for a quarterback, and they would love to have Mariota, but there's no real likelihood of them getting him unless they really trade the farm, which they could do, and the Bears could do, and there's other teams that could. But they do want to make sure they have a competent player at quarterback. E.J. Manuel really sucked, so they're not going to go with him. And he's still on the roster, so they might see a trade with him. But Jay Cutler comes in there to be a competent starter for the Bills in case they can't pull anybody else in. Denver brings in Brian Leonard back. I like having some running power backs that are fullbacks, so Leonard has been pretty good for Denver these past few seasons. So when he had free agency, he's 31. He's not a top free agent option. You can see he had $800 signing bonus for a year. Then you got Josh Wilson, cornerback, 30-year-old there from Houston. Jeremy Zutov from the Colts, so they get a center as well. And then Robert Sands at safety. Cleveland brings in one of the top guards, Rodney Hudson, 26-year-old for 2 years. They bring back Ron Brace, and they pull 2 Steelers, Roy Miller and Jordan Todman. So Jordan Todman was one of those players that when I played Madden 13 or Madden 25 when it was back in 2014, I always liked him as like a cheap trade option. I liked him as a running back. And in real life and in my franchise, he has not taken off to being this superstar running back. So I figured he's perfect for Cleveland. Buccaneers bring in 1 free agent. They only had cap space for so many people, and with a $33 million, like $11 million a year, they go all in on getting one of the best centers in the free agency class and one of the best in the league. So that really helps their interior defense. Same thing with the Cardinals, not a lot of cap space. So with about $9 million a year, we see Daquan Bowers, the pass rusher for Detroit, going to the Cardinals. Cardinals lose Justin Smith, the one pass rusher veteran, to retirement. So they wanted to get some more depth there, and Daquan Bowers will likely give that to them. Then you got the San Diego Chargers, and they just go crazy. They got Haloti Ngata, the best defensive player and best player in this class. So he's going to really help that Chargers front 7. They also bring in Dez Bryant from San Francisco, and they bring in Luke Stalker from San Francisco. So they had to let go of Santonio Holmes because he decided not to stay with the Chargers. So they bring in another superstar receiver, Dez Bryant, and that's critical for them. Chris Conte, the Raiders safety, goes to San Diego as well. Then the Chiefs, they bring in Ryan Clady from Pittsburgh. Steelers losing their left tackle, and they also sign Mike Iupati from the Lions. So they talk about left tackle and a right guard. They're really helping their O-line for Blake Bortles and Trent Richardson. They get Browns middle linebacker Bruce Carter, who was a pretty solid guy for them. He just didn't want to come back to Cleveland. They do sign Pierre Garçon to give another receiving option for Blake Bortles. They have Justin Hunter, who's been doing pretty well but they need some more help there. They bring Clinton McDonald at DT, and then they sign Julius Thomas from the Atlanta Falcons, who has been catching passes from Peyton Manning, but decided to move on. Colts have a splash in free agency. They get Randall Cobb from the Packers, the best wide receiver in this class. They pay a lot of money for him too. They also bring in Greg Olsen, the tight end from the Saints. So they go from having like Evan Rodriguez and Jeremy Shockey, both under 70 overall, to now an 82 superstar 30-year-old vertical threat tight end. They also bring in a guard with Brandon Albert, who's pretty top tier. Daniel Manning, an older safety, but he's an 82 overall. This is where the Panthers have been getting dissected, and all their talent is going everywhere else. So we'll see if the Panthers are able to stay relevant. And the middle linebackers are always far and few between. So Zach Diosi goes to the Colts, giving them some more depth there at the middle linebacker, likely going to be their starter. The Commanders make a splash. They bring in two of the top defensive prospects here, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie in the backfield, Justin Houston as a linebacker. They do sign Colin Kaepernick to just make more drama in that Johnny Manziel Washington Commanders QB room. Head coach Chuck Pagano is going to have an interesting kind of navigation here. So Manziel and Kaepernick will likely compete. They could decide to draft Marcus Mariota. However, there could be more value in trading back and accumulating more picks. They bring in Jason Snelling, who can be sort of a power back, utility back. They have Jaquez Rogers from Detroit. He left them for Washington so that he might be able to be a suitable role player as they lost Mike Goodson. They bring in a receiver with Kevin Ogletree from the Panthers and Sean Lavauer, some offensive line depth. As for the Cowboys, a lot of their primary needs are met. So they were able to get the best punter in the league with Andy Lee, or maybe the best in the class of free agency. They get one of the best fullbacks in John Kuhn. They get some depth O-linemen with Bernadou. And they also signed Jeff Ota as well. So they get some O-line help, a fullback, and a punter. Dolphins have no money. They don't sign anybody. Eagles have no money. They don't sign anybody. Falcons, they get Derek Johnson from their rival Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So a team that needs some help there on defense. They get their anchor. They get their captain on defense. They also help their defensive backfield by getting Bernard Pollard from the Baltimore Ravens, 30-year-old. They also bring in Lance Kendricks, a tight end from the Patriots. They bring him in as they lost Julius Thomas. They also have linebacker Michael Okwo. Now, Okwo, he might be behind, I think it's Arthur Motes? Who is it? Let's see. Falcons. Arthur Brown. And so now they have Okwo. You may have never heard of him because most people haven't. But he was like on the Philadelphia Eagles when they were making the playoffs every time and killing it. And so he kind of became a reliable linebacker. So here he is going to the Falcons at 30 years old. And then there are two Colts players, Evan Mathis and PK Sam, both of which come from the Colts, who used to play with Peyton Manning. Now, PK Sam was Mr. Irrelevant. He was a 7th-round pick, 32nd overall. Basically, he went to the Houston Texans for several seasons after they won the Super Bowl, then went to the Colts, and then now he's rejoining Peyton Manning in Atlanta. So I thought that was an interesting addition there. Then the New York Giants, they pick up a player on each of the tiers of defense. They get their defensive back in Antrell Roll, the veteran 32-year-old cornerback, 86 overall. Dequel Jackson to be the anchor of their middle linebacking core from the Colts. So the Colts, they lost Jackson, which is why they signed DOC. They also bring in Ziggy Hood. Now, an interesting thing here is they bring in Eli Manning. So Eli Manning comes in for John Gruden. Now, Eli Manning had some success with the Chiefs where he was drafted. Then he tried to bounce around to like the Seattle Seahawks, the Baltimore Ravens, the Packers, and it never really worked out. Just because Manning has a higher overall than Matt Barkley does not mean Eli Manning will start over Matt Barkley. Overall is like whose line? The points are all made up, the scores all. What is it? The game's all made up, and the points don't matter, right? And so overall doesn't matter at all because I want to see how they play on the field. But Eli Manning does give them a veteran option, and I'm giving him a chance to be Eli Manning with the New York Giants wearing that jersey, and we'll see if he can sort of resurrect his career or if he's just going to be a backup to Matt Barkley. They get Bilo Powell from the Jets, so they go from the New York team to another New York team, and they also sign accidentally 2 fullbacks, so it's Vonta Leach and Lawrence Vickers. One will likely be released, probably Vickers, before the end of preseason. So let's see, we just did the Giants, right? So we're going to go to the Jaguars, where they get Tommy Harris from the Bears. They also make some splashes on offense. So they made the playoffs with Colt McCoy and basically garbage. So they were able to bring in Doug Baldwin to join Tavon Austin, Chris Owusu, who's like a 69 overall, but has been a reliable number 2 receiver. But now they get a superstar, and that's Doug Baldwin. They also bring in the best running back, who was the Packers, the Lions, and the Jaguars were all fighting for Mike Goodson, and Mike Goodson decided to go to the AFC South playoff contender. They also bring in Vernon Davis from the Raiders. So Vernon Davis had 9 years of experience in the league. 31-year-old goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Jaguars have been working with let's see, where is he? Deion Sims, who is 24 years old, 76 overall, and he wasn't a 76 overall. He worked his way up to that point because he was just the best we had, and he was like a 70 overall or a 68 overall, and he literally worked himself to being a star dev tight end. So the Jaguars have to decide whether I go with the younger guy and then have Vernon Davis be subbed in and be the backup tight end, or if I just put the superstar and start him with Deion Sims just sucking it up and playing behind Vernon Davis. We got Brandon Flowers too, 81 cornerback, 29-year-old, and Lance Lewis for some offensive line depth. Jets bring in a middle linebacker because, again, far and few between. So Kelvin Shepard from Baltimore joins the Jets. And then they get a right tackle just for some more depth from the Chiefs. Then we've got the Detroit Lions. They got Michael Bush. So as I mentioned, I sort of like that power fullback player. And so Michael Bush goes from the Giants to the Detroit Lions to give them that fullback option or that power back option. Especially as Reggie Bush gets injured, and we'll see how well he comes back. I did knock some of his agility and speed and injury because he had a gruesome injury. They do bring in Kendall Hunter as well, so they have some offensive running support because they lost Jaquez Rogers too. And then they had Albert Hainsworth, just a veteran, 13 years in the league, run stopper, plug the gaps, kind of like a Sean Rogers, except for a lot older. And then Pernell McPhee, Super Bowl champion, pass rusher, 26 years old. That'll help a little bit there to chase down the quarterback. Then the Green Bay Packers, who had a significant turnaround season because of Brock Osweiler. So what do? They get him a receiving option with Santonio Holmes. They bring in the best left tackle in free agency, one of the best in the league. I think Joe Thomas is definitely number one. Then they had Von Miller on the right side, and they bring in Ryan Kerrigan to be the left side of that defensive line. Brent Selleck is going to be the backup tight end behind Jordan Cameron. Even though Selleck is higher overall, Cameron is just plays better. He's like Pro Bowl caliber tight end. So Selleck is just adding more depth to the Packers. So they have more options at tight end and receiving options. And then Phillip Rivers has been bouncing around as a backup. And so, hey, if Brock Osweiler screws up, Rivers might get a chance here and there, but Rivers is like 6'5", Osweiler 6'8", so they got that big kind of strong arm from Osweiler, but more of a game manager from Rivers. I guess they say strong arm here. But I think a lot of good additions there for the Green Bay Packers. Then we got the Panthers. They bring back Joe Flacco, and that's where most of their money went. I had a hard time solidifying Flacco in free agent or the re-signing period. It was the Panthers, the New York Giants. There's another team, I think it was the Saints and like the Ravens and the Texans. Were all trying to get Joe Flacco, and he decided to return to Carolina. And because of that, they lost a lot of ability to not buy players, but to acquire players. And they also signed Niles Paul from the Giants, so they get one other free agent other than Flacco. But they lost a lot too, so we'll see if they're able to make that up. New England Patriots, also strapped for cash, were able to pull in the biggest free agent that they've had in a while. So Kyle Rudolph from the Chiefs, the young star tight end. That's important because we need to get Tom Brady some weapons. They also signed Clinton Portis, the aging running back from the Jets. He's 74 overall. They do have Jamal Charles, but they end up getting a cheap deal for the veteran running back who's, Hall of Fame. He ran so well in my franchise. He's the LaDainian Tomlinson of my reality. And then Antoine Bethea. They add some safety depth there from the Chargers. Then we're going to go to the Raiders. So the Raiders bring in Matt Forte, the Super Bowl champion running back, 78 overall. And they also bring in pass rusher Jared Allen from the Arizona Cardinals. So he's older, but they bring in some depth there that they needed. Rams, they bring in 2 guards. Barry Richardson, the 29-year-old, and Chris Myers, the 33-year-old, because they were in desperate need of O-line and interior O-line help, and so they get that. Then the Baltimore Ravens bring in Derek Anderson from the Cardinals. Anderson went 5-0 when he started for the injured Andy Dalton and basically brought himself back into being a potential starter in this league. And I thought that in real life he was drafted in like the 6th round or whatever, or maybe he was undrafted to the Baltimore Ravens, and then he went to Cleveland and so forth. In my franchise, Anderson was drafted by the Broncos, ended up taking the starting job from Brian Griese, led the team to the Super Bowl, only to lose the Super Bowl, but then kind of was a solid starting quarterback, went to Seattle, started there for a few years. Then he went to, I forget where, he was a backup somewhere. And then he was a backup in Arizona and proved his worth again. And Baltimore needs to get some stability. They're unlikely to land a quarterback. I mean, Mariota's a 2nd overall pick or 3rd overall pick is a long way to go from where they're drafting. So I don't think that they're likely to pick up a rookie. But next year, I mean, that's Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, Jacoby Brissett, a lot of options. Now, again, they don't know that, but they do know that getting a quarterback in this draft class is not very likely. So Anderson getting for a $4.8 million contract is a no-brainer. They do bring in receiver Aurelius Ben from Green Bay, so they get some wide receiver help in Baltimore, and Raheem Moore, 25-year-old safety from Denver. Then the Saints, they bring in right tackle Eric Winston from Pittsburgh, getting some offensive line help. They get Jacoby Jones, a wide receiver from Buffalo, who's been the number 1 guy in Buffalo for 8 years. And yes, I decided to have Drew Brees, 37-year-old, go to the New Orleans Saints. So he gets 1 season probably. Maybe he might have more seasons, I suppose. Between him and Geno Smith, they might decide just to go with Geno Smith because, he's the younger guy, but I wanted to give Brees a chance to play somewhere, and the 49ers were not that place, so they're going younger, and the Saints are weak at quarterback, so Brees or Geno Smith will be fighting for that starting job as Brees is declining in his career. Then Charles Clay, who was like a top 40 receiver in the league. He got to star dev. He was like a 66 overall. He was fantastic this year for the Bengals, and the Bengals ended up not signing him because I'll say he wanted more money than they wanted to pay him. But he ends up going to the Saints to be an option for them, and they lost Greg Olsen too. So they get a replacement for Greg Olsen, who's younger and actually technically is looking like he's a rising star. Then we got Seattle. They poach Cleveland center Marquise Pouncey, so that helps their interior line. They also bring in James Carpenter for the tackle position. They signed Shane Vereen to be a sort of receiving back for Matthew Stafford because the Seattle Seahawks had Marshawn Lynch, who was a bruising back, but I really was missing that sort of Danny Woodhead, that Dion Lewis, Darren Sproles type running back. So Shane Vereen gives Seattle that option with a very loaded team. And then they bring in Dante, I think it's Mook, whatever. They bring in Dante from the Chiefs to be a speed rusher, outside linebacker for them, 27-year-old. Pittsburgh also struggling with cap space. They bring in Jermon Bushrod. So they replace their left tackle, Ryan Clady, with the Chiefs left tackle because they really wanted to secure that blind side. Then we've got Mark Sanchez returning to the Texans. I know, what boring stuff I do. We had Flacco going back to the Panthers, and we got Mark Sanchez. Nobody really wanting Sanchez. I mean, remember if I had any other team go for him. I don't think I did. Yeah, no other team really wanted him because they were all set. and I wasn't going to pay him a big deal. So he got $25 million for another year in Houston. Houston kind of looking at the writing on the wall, not knowing where they were able to go with this. So not really having a quarterback option. So might as well bring the guy back that Jeff Fisher has worked with these past few seasons. But Fisher could be on the hot seat, and Sanchez's time here may not continue. But he has some stability, so they're going to keep it. They also bring in the Super Bowl MVP from several years ago, Nick Collins, an aging safety at 79 overall. Mike Mitchell, a 28-year-old, and then they bring in Jarius Wynn, who wasn't with anybody last year, but they just needed some depth, and so we got Wynn. 2 more teams to go. Delaney Walker lands with the Titans, and so Walker has been basically the Gronkowski, Travis Kelce of my league. Just an absolute stud, X-Factor tight end. Pittsburgh was not able to retain him, so he ends up going to the Titans, which was actually the team he was with in real life. And I gotta tell you, there were a lot of teams that did go for Delaney Walker. Let's see if I can pull some up here. So Delaney Walker, there's the Titans. He also got some offers from the Saints because they lost Olsen. They also had the Packers were looking at Delaney Walker because they have all this cap space. Even though they have Jordan Cameron, they ended up going with Brent Selleck, who's probably more of a suitable fit for them anyways. Panthers, they went for Charles Clay and Walker, but they couldn't really sign Walker because of the lack of cap space. Chargers explored it, but just didn't have the money to make it work. But they also bring in Chris Carter, a linebacker, and then they have Tavares Jackson at quarterback, and they also bring in Joe Webb to be the backup. Kind of fits that mobile quarterback sort of play style. And then we got the Minnesota Vikings. They bring in one of the best prospects and linebackers with KJ Wright, 26-year-old star, 82 overall. They bring in Toby Gerhart. So Gerhart was a Viking in real life, but he's been the bruising fullback for the Rams. Now he's going to be the bruising fullback for the Vikings. They also poach Michael Huff from the Carolina Panthers, so they pick up veteran safety. They bring in Akeem Ayers, a left outside linebacker, to go with KJ Wright. Tawan Jones from the Giants, and then they bring a backup quarterback from the Colts, Tyrod Taylor, to back up RG3. So there you have it. That's the free agency period in my franchise. Normally I kind of go for the main guys, then I do the draft, and then I might pick up some people after the draft if I'm missing players or I need to fill my roster in other spots. When we look at the draft order, it's going to be interesting. We got the Niners, Commanders, Colts, Saints, Bills, Bears, Titans, Vikings, Texans, Steelers. You can see that the Packers have a lot of draft picks. I mean, look at that board light up. 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and then a 6th and a 7th. So they're going to be able to load up on some talent here. Then we've got, let's see. Draft. I don't know, to have a mock draft. So, mock draft number 5, right? So they think San Francisco is going to get Marcus Mariota and then Winston. I guess we'll see. Leonard Williams, Dante Fowler, Amari Cooper, Scherf, Armstead, Waynes, Dupree, Pete. They already just signed to the left tackles. That's not likely. Marcus Peters, Nelson Aguilar. Yeah. Vic Beasley, Shane. Interesting. Danny Shelton falling to 19. They think Browns are going to take Todd Gurley. That's interesting. He's going to drop that far. All right, well, the next video will likely be the draft. That might take some time to put together. But yeah, thanks for watching the video. Leave a like if you like the content. Subscribe to the channel. Looking forward to sharing more of this franchise with all of you.